Since the passing of his beloved brother, Eddie Van Halen, in October of 2020, we haven't heard much from Alex Van Halen, but that's because he had been working on his memoir called Brothers about his life and career in Van Halen, of course, his relationship with his iconic brother, Eddie Van Halen. And the book has just been released, and we learned a lot of interesting information. You can definitely pick that up. I've linked to it in the description. And one of the things he reveals is what ultimately led David Lee Roth to depart Van Halen really at the peak of their fame shortly after they released their album 1984. There apparently were some very strong disagreements about creative control, but also, as Alex Van Halen says in this book, apparently David Lee Roth was simply jealous that someone else was getting more attention than him, and he claims he even made efforts to get Eddie Van Halen to tone down the guitar solos. Here's more. It was the peak of their success. Van Halen had just released their iconic record, 1984, and they had just wrapped their tour in support of that album. But behind the scenes, things had been falling apart for quite some time. And now, in his new memoir, Alex Van Halen is breaking his silence in the wake of his brother's passing and talking about that moment in time, which he describes as the most disappointing moment in his career up to that point. And we had also heard about those long-rumored tribute shows to Eddie Van Halen that supposedly fell apart behind the scenes. Alex revealed it was due to a heated conversation with David Lee Roth that involved paying tribute to Eddie Van Halen during the show. Alex Van Halen told Rolling Stone, "The thing that broke the camel's back, and I can be honest about this now, was I said, Dave, at some point, we have to have a very overt, not a bowing, but an acknowledgement of Ed in the gig. If you look at how Queen does it, they show old footage. And the moment I said we gotta acknowledge Ed, Dave popped a fuse. The vitriol that came out was unbelievable. He said, I'm from the street. You talk to me like that, I'm gonna beat your f***ing brains out. You got it? And I mean that. And that's how it ended. It's just, my God, it's like I don't know him anymore. I have nothing but the utmost respect for his work ethic and all that. But Dave, you got to work as a community, It's not you alone anymore." So we were very close to these tribute shows happening to the extent that there were rehearsals going on, but ultimately that conversation about merely paying tribute to Eddie Van Halen during the show led this verbal disagreement to take place between Alex and David Lee Roth, and it didn't happen. And it does seem as though David Lee Roth still has some sort of animosity towards Eddie Van Halen if what Alex is saying is true. And we've also seen David Lee Roth taking shots at Eddie's son in those videos that he was putting up on his channel last year also. But now we have Alex Van Halen opening up about what was going on behind the scenes back when David Lee Roth exited Van Halen at the peak of their fame. In his new memoir, Brothers, Alex Van Halen tells the behind-the-scenes story of how things unfolded when David Lee Roth made the shocking announcement that he was leaving the band, just at the peak of their fame. Alex says it came down to one simple thing: jealousy. David Lee Roth wanted the spotlight, and Eddie Van Halen, being the guitar icon that he was taking it. He said he couldn't handle the fact that Eddie was getting more attention than he was. He kept asking Eddie to play fewer guitar solos. Dave was convinced he was going to be a movie star, and it was just as the 1984 album reached #1 on the Billboard's album chart that David Lee Roth left the band. He said it was the most disappointing thing I'd experienced in my life, the thing that seemed the most wasteful and unjust. Despite the rift between the Van Halen brothers and David Lee Roth, Alex still acknowledges his very vital contributions to the band's legacy and includes him as one of the 3 main ingredients of the band. He said, "At the time, we didn't recognize it because we were constantly battling things out. That's why I mentioned in the book that the first person I called when Ed died was Dave, because I felt like I owed him that, to the work we had done together, and the fact our families knew each other, and the fact that everybody was sort of on the same level, if you will, when we first started." He added, "I don't know where things went wrong. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Dave and his work ethic. I just think some of his choices were really strange to me, but that's not my job to figure it out." I don't think we'll ever really fully understand why things went sideways with Van Halen and David Lee Roth leaving the group. He's a very eccentric person, and it's honestly shocking to hear that the reason that these Eddie Van Halen tribute shows didn't happen is because David Lee Roth took issue with paying tribute to Eddie Van Halen during the performances, which is pretty crazy. If that did go down that way. Of course, the new book, Brothers, is out everywhere now. Sure to be a bestseller. You can check it out. Link in the description. That's your latest update here from Rock Feed. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on for the latest news and updates.